Welcome everyone to this episode of Manufacturing Talk Radio. I'm Tim Grady and I'm here with my co-host Lou Weiss, who is president of All Metals and Forge Group. You can find his company at steelforge.com. If you're looking for industrial open die forgings or custom shapes for machinery, the defense industry, aerospace, and many other industrial uses. And joining us on this conversation today is Harry Moser, who is president and founder of the Reshoring Initiative, which is incredibly important because bringing back to the United States is what we want to be involved with. So thank you, Harry, for joining us.
Thanks, Tim and Lou. Good to be back.
So today is, I'm sorry, Tim, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask Harry the question because we talked about in a series that we did with him previously, and this is follow-up part 2 to that. Is reshoring really happening, and particularly in the United States? And the answer is yes, in fact, it is. So what are the obstacles, Harry? What do we have to overcome in order to really accelerate it and make it happen other than having another pandemic?
For years, we've said that the main actions that should be taken are first skilled workforce, to get many more and many higher caliber students better trained as tool makers, welders, precision machinists, electronics, etc. So skilled workforce, always number one. Number two, get the dollar down by 20 or 30% to make U.S. pricing more competitive. Keep the corporate tax rate from going up so the after-tax return on investing in the U.S. stays competitive, and having a value-added tax, which for almost every other country has a 15% tax on our products when they come into their country, and the company that exports to here gets a 15% tax credit to subsidize its exports. We don't do either of those things, so we're sort of fighting with both hands tied behind our back. So those are the 4 things I'd advocate, and if we do those things, then I'm convinced that the companies will be busy enough that they'll spend the money on the skilled workforce, they'll spend the money on automation and productivity, our competitiveness will go up, and we'll become the industrial Goliath of the world again, which is a lot more fun.
Yeah, no doubt. Harry, I don't know that I have ever heard the United States Congress, a senator, an elected representative talk about a VAT tax, which is the value-added tax you mentioned. Have you heard that conversation taking place in any smoke-filled back rooms?
Well, in 2017, Brady from Texas, who put together the Republican bill, was strongly in favor of a border adjustment tax, a BAT, which is essentially a simplified version of a VAT. And it was rejected, and it's always been rejected because the Republicans hate every tax and don't want any taxes raised. And it's once you get all the other countries, they start with 5% and then it's 7, 10, 15, 20, it goes up really easily. Okay. And so the Republicans hate that, and the Democrats hate it because it raises, if you don't do it right, it raises the cost of living, and therefore it's regressive because the lower income people, it takes a higher share of their earnings. And so each side is against it. But increasingly, economists are saying it's necessary and needs to be done. So what's happened is the other countries have reduced their corporate income taxes and pushed the tax burden over onto the citizens. And so therefore, companies from the U.S. move to places like Ireland that have a 5% tax rate instead of our 21 now used to be 35%. And so these other countries have manipulated or modified their taxes, refined their taxes to bring the companies and the factories there, and we haven't acted significantly to do that. So, I hope we do it.
Well, they would rather charge the American public 25% import tariff duties as opposed to the opposing country, which is what our U.S. tariffs are all about right now. You bring up a series of interesting points. I would like to also talk about, going back to part one of our series with you, is about the shortage of labor here in the US and how that impacts bringing back or not bringing back jobs to America.
Okay, couple of things on that. First, um, surveys of companies and site selectors say that skilled workforce availability is the number one criterion for where companies place a factory, place anything, but especially a factory. And so clearly it's important. And for 30 or 40 years, the US has had shortages of skilled workers, precision machinists, welders, tool makers, et cetera. We have not done a good job of training them in comparison to, say, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Japan, places, China, places like that. So traditionally, we have not done a real good job, and and so that certainly has hurt the flow of work back. Um, but there's some good news, I think, and that is the U.S. is doing a better job. I read about new apprentice programs starting all the time. High schools and community colleges starting up advanced manufacturing programs. So I see it happening. I think of, we used to be a 2 and Germany was a 10. And I think we've come up to be a 3, maybe a 4, yeah. And
Wow,
Germany,
that's big.
okay, well, it's better. And Germany has fallen off from being a 10 to being maybe an 8. So in Germany, in most of the countries, it's harder to get the kids to go into manufacturing. I used to be on the board of ISTMA, International Special Tooling and Machining Association. And we had a meeting somewhere, France, Germany, somewhere. And country after country got up and said, we can't get the kids to go into manufacturing anymore. They all want to go to university and become talk show hosts, or the sociologists or philosophers or something like that. And they're not hungry as they used to be. Where I'm in a manufacturing job sounded great. I even read an article about a month ago, a Chinese business owner saying the Chinese kids will not work in manufacturing anymore. They all want to go to university and do whatever. See? So it's a disease it's another pandemic all over the world. And we caught in this case, we caught the disease first 40 years ago. And we're starting to come out of it because families are starting to understand that the incomes are about the same, apprenticeship, toolmaker, graduate, compared to most, like liberal arts, certainly degrees, and you don't have the debt, and you start making money at the age of right out of high school, and so the future, the net value of all the incomes is better for that toolmaker than it is for, say, the English major. And so I think people are starting to understand that, and like one example that I always give. I was speaking at University of Wisconsin in Platteville, Wisconsin, and there was somebody there from Milwaukee Area Technical College, very big community college. And he was very proud of the fact that his community college was the second largest graduate school in Wisconsin. And normally graduate schools teach graduate degrees. But he said, only Madison, the main campus of the University of Wisconsin, has had more people who already had a bachelor's degree, because thousands of people were coming back with bachelor's degree in liberal arts subjects to get a technical degree at Milwaukee Area Technical College so they could get a job and make an income and pay off their college debt. So that tells me that the American people are starting to wise up and see that what you and I have been recommending for decades is a very good choice for many people.
I don't know if you know the name Richard Wolff. Richard Wolff is a rather well-known, famous, progressive economist, socialist bordering on communist.
Okay.
And if you look up Richard Wolff, you get some interesting insight into how this country began as a village, and then it became a village plus a community and a town councilor and so on and so forth, until now we have two parties, maybe three or four minor ones, one Democrat, one Republican, and one is an oligarchy, and the other is authoritarian. And the story about what's happening right now is the fight between these two concepts, having nothing to do with anything we just talked about.
Okay. Yeah. One thing I wanted to, so I don't forget, I believe manufacturing is a great career, a wonderful career. So I wanted to show off my T-shirt here, which says "Manufacturing is cool." Okay, so this is a message to all the people out there that when they're trying to figure out what career they want or what their kids should go after, manufacturing is cool. It's neat to actually make things, to be responsible for making something right, to be able to hold it in your hand and say, I made that, or I helped make that, I programmed it, I did something. So I just wanted to leave that message with the audience.
Well, here, I think it's a powerful point. You brought up a couple of things that were very interesting so far. One of the things you mentioned is this taxing disparity where Ireland has a 5% corporate tax. We have a 21, probably going up corporate tax. So we are penalizing corporations who are really trying to grow their business so they can hire more people to create more things because there is lots of demand out there. I'm not sure, however, we're going to accomplish that in the near term, and we could still see a penalty against nearshoring because of it.
I don't want to see the corporate tax rate go up. The Democrats have the majority, therefore they, more or less call the shot, but with a sort of not too efficiently. If I had my choice, I could live with a 25% tax rate if we got the dollar down by 20%. It would have much more benefit in terms of our competitiveness. But it's finally it's a mistake because once you raise the taxes to 25, then companies are going to say, I'm going to build a factory for 20 years use. Maybe they're going to go to 30 or 35 or 40. So I would discourage raising it at all from where we are. In fact, I've been recommending that we should take the corporate tax rate as low as 0 and look at how much tax revenue is lost. It's a couple $100 billion a year. It's that kind of a number, 200, 300 billion, and then raise the taxes on the rich, in other words, on people that make more than any of us do, and recover all that tax from those rich people because they're the ones that are going to benefit from the corporations not paying any income tax. They're going to have higher value stock, dividends, buybacks, et cetera. So instead of taxing companies that have a choice of where to put their factories, tax people, rich people, who generally speaking will not leave the country. They won't move to Switzerland or the Cayman Islands or somewhere to avoid the tax. So I think there's more efficient ways to organize the tax system so that you maximize manufacturing in the United States.
The Pandora Papers of this past week would indicate that there's a lot of money offshore from not too many people.
Mm-hmm. No question. Yeah.
I think it's about 330 billionaires with major offshore accounts. But that being said, we have been a limited time, and I did want to touch on how we are going to fix some of the things that we've been talking about, namely, and a big problem, of course, is the worker shortage. We're talking about where have all the truck drivers gone? Where have the trucks gone? Where have the containers gone? How are we going to fix all this? And Harry, give it a shot.
Okay, I can deal mainly with manufacturing, and unfortunately, there's like a cap on manufacturing wages because we have to compete with the Chinese, the Indians, the Mexicans. If we're not reasonably price competitive, everything will be bought over there and shipped here, and so to allow wages to go up in manufacturing, which is what you need to do to attract more people into manufacturing. One thing you need to do. Go back to what I said before about lowering the dollar, doing value-added tax, et cetera, because that way, with the dollar down, we can afford the people to pay more dollars and still have the same cost expressed in euros or in won or yen or something like that. Okay, that's first thing. Second, it's important to publicize the successes that have been achieved with reshoring. For example, going from having accumulated 1 million jobs announced in the last 10 years, so that because one reason students, guidance counselors don't think manufacturing careers are good careers because they've seen the shop, the factory in town shut down and the work goes to some other country, and people on opioids and depressed and manufacturing for many people had a miserable experience because they lost their careers. And if we can show and document and publicize that it's coming back, it's not going to China anymore, it's coming back from China, then it's going to be easier to convince a smart high school kid and a guidance counselor to say, yes, Susie, you want to become a welder, become a welder. It's a good career once again. So
do you think that the government is doing their share of getting the story out about reshoring on mainstream, not just these isolated schools and this and that?
Yeah, I'd say Trump and Biden both talk a lot about bringing back manufacturing. They don't often say the word reshoring. They talk about bringing it back, so to speak. I think there is one very important role the government can take. So I'll tell you a story. I was about 8 years ago, the Labor Department invited me down to tell them how to get the workforce ready for reshoring. Exactly what we're talking about. And I'm in the Secretary of Labor's conference room, and I stood up and said, well, first, the department has to stop being part of the problem and become part of the solution. And they said, okay, what do you got? And so I pulled up their website, and it's something you've seen 100 times. It's a bar chart, and it shows degree level, no high school, community college, 4-year master's, PhD, and says income goes up with number of degrees. And I said, I thought the Department of Labor was responsible for the workforce and responsible for the apprentice program. Why don't we have in here, right next to bachelor's degree, why don't we have the average income of people who've passed an apprenticeship? And so the high school guidance counselor, the teacher, the family, the reporter can say, interesting. You don't have to go to university. You can just get a lot of training and you can make just as good money. And they folded immediately, and they more or less did what I wanted on that one chart. But I've gone back, and there's another 10 charts that have the old format. And so I'm calling on the Labor Department and the Education Department once again. I'm willing to audit your entire website and point out where you can do a better job of promoting skilled workforce in America. Harry Moser, give me a call.
And with that, give us your URL and your email address.
Okay, so it's www.reshorenow.org, and it's harry.moser@reshorenow.org.
Well, Harry, that's an interesting point that they should adjust their data, and I agree. And I'm also glad that you're pointing out repeatedly about these technical college degrees. I think a lot of the younger generation right now wants to be the next YouTube star, TikTok maven, whatever it is in the digital world, as they sit in their parents' basement in their pajamas, and they're now in their 30s, but they could still be in their 20s. And there's a better life out there. Yes, you got to go to work. Yes, but there's so much value in that, going to work and producing something of value. And if on the side you can make your YouTube channel fly, great. But I wouldn't put all of my ponies, all my bets on that one pony. I'm not sure it's going to finish.
Well, supporting that, the Chinese, a couple of weeks ago, mandated that youth could not spend more than 3 hours a week on social media because they wanted them to do something productive and beneficial instead of what we're letting our kids do. One thing I wanted to make sure we got in terms of generally supporting reshoring and making it happen, we offer several tools that the companies can use. We have the TCO, Total Cost of Ownership Estimator, free online on the website. And companies can go in and say, I can get it in China for whatever, 8, US for 10. Of course, I'll get it in China. But no, using the TCO estimator, adds in duty, freight, packaging, carrying cost of inventory, risk of stocking out, et cetera, et cetera. And now all of a sudden it's clear 10 is better than 8. So we encourage companies to go on and use that either as a sourcing decision tool, a purchasing tool, or as a sales tool to convince their customer to buy from them instead of continuing to buy from offshore. Okay? Then we offer the import substitution program where a company can put up a product. I'm really good at making these, pump, fan, shaft, something. And then we'll train them on the TCO estimator and then we'll give them a list of the biggest companies that are importing the things they're good at making, what tonnage each is bring in, roughly what they're paying for it, whom they're buying it from offshore. And then the company uses the TCO estimator to convince that importer to buy from them instead. Okay, so we can provide the leads and the tools to bring it back. So everybody who's listening out there, looking out there, go online. It's all on the website. And if you can't figure it out, then you email me and we help you. Because my goal is 5 million jobs, and we've got 4 million more to bring back.
That's an amazing program. Now I understand why you're so busy. By the way, I'm kind of curious as we wind down our discussion. Kind of curious about the gentleman, the founder look behind your right shoulder.
Oh well, on this shoulder over here, that's a Swedish uncle that I never met, and this one over here is my English grandfather, who worked for the local gas company, started at 17 as a plumber, retired as board of directors, secretary of the corporation at 83. So 66 years working for the same company. That's a goal.
That's amazing. Well, I only have 6 more years to go then. So I'm going to beat all you. All right, this is terrific. I really appreciate your input, and there aren't many people that know your stuff. So I want to thank you for that.
No, I'm honored. I'm honored to be here again, and a year from now we should come up with what's new and do it again.
It won't be that long, I assure you.
Okay.
Absolutely. Harry, yes, thank you for being with us. And offline, we would like to have a conversation with you about the monthly publication we put out called Manufacturing Outlook. I think there's some opportunity for us to work together there as well.
Sounds like fun. Yeah.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Bye for Harry, and I want to remind everyone to check us out at jacketmediaco.com, where you can find links to all of the podcasts that we produce. We're looking at ways to bring on lots of new podcasts, particularly in the manufacturing space, but in other interests as well. And we thank you for listening to this episode of Manufacturing Talk Radio.